How to build a data mart in 10 minutes or less. In the fast-paced world we live in today, we're faced with an ever-increasing demand for data accessibility and data analytics. Our business users are now requiring a different kind of delivery model. A delivery model that can be put in terms of days and weeks versus months and years. Now, when we take a look at the traditional approach of implementing these kinds of projects, we're faced with some challenges. One of those challenges is really around time to market, right? As we increase data volumes, as we increase the number of data sources, we also increase our complexity and the time needed to deliver that to our end user. The other area we see challenges in is really around quality, and more specifically is the scenarios of having multiple copies of the same data lying around our organization. This tends to also have whatever is done to that data to be siloed to some degree. And the third area that we see challenges in is really accessibility. Most organizations have more than one reporting tool that is used, which is great because it provides our business users with tremendous flexibility, but it also introduces certain challenges. One of those challenges is really around the business rules that the organization is built on. Many times we'll see scenarios where these rules are duplicated across the tools, thus duplicating effort. But at times we will also see inconsistency with these rules across the tools. Now, if we take a look at a traditional architecture, you can see this very plainly. What we see here is we have our disparate sources across the bottom. We have our integration layer, our traditional data warehouse, and then our siloed data marts in this case for specific applications or user groups. Now, what is really needed in today's dynamic world is a new type of architecture, more of a modern architecture. And this architecture is really implemented through Denodo by using the concept of an enterprise data fabric. What you see here is really that data fabric is represented by our logical data warehouse. What this allows us to do is really resolve or minimize many of the challenges that we just mentioned. There's no longer a concern of having the number of sources being limited or the data volumes being limited. The time to market is now greatly increased because we don't have to physically move the data from one place to another and transform it as we go along. The data fabric can handle all of that for us. Now, in our demo today, we're actually going to show you how Denodo enables this enterprise data fabric. In our scenario, we're going to have multiple different sources. We're going to have Denodo as our data fabric, and then have our end users access this data fabric through Tableau and Power BI. Now what I like to do is actually hand it over to our data analyst who will walk you through our demo today.
Welcome, and thank you for attending our demo. Today we're going to show you how to build a rapid data mart in just a few minutes, from connecting to 3 different data sources, which will be SQL Server, Amazon Redshift, and Salesforce, through to leveraging that unified data fabric in Denodo with 2 different reporting tools, which will be Power BI and Tableau. So this demo was originally motivated by the constantly growing demand for rapid analytics. We understand that organizations want to be able to leverage the data that they collect within a matter of days and weeks instead of months or years. And so with that in mind, we designed a use case, which is that there's one firm with 2 different departments. Each department has different needs from the same underlying data, but they're going to use 2 different methods to access it. So one department will be sales. They're just looking at the last 12 months of data. They're looking at product performance, and then they're going to be building a dashboard in Tableau, whereas the other department will be forecasting and budgeting. They're looking at trends from earlier data than just the last 12 months, and they're looking at product performance, and they'll be building a dashboard in Power BI and accessing the data in a different way than the group using Tableau. And so with that in mind, I'm just going to jump into the demo. So here's our first data source. This is SQL Server. This is the fact table looking at transactions. The way that we treated this use case is such that SQL Server is really just is our current EDW, and it has the last 12 months of data. and it has a fact table with transactions, whereas and it also has three-dimensional tables with date, geography, and product information. And then Amazon Redshift will have the same structure essentially. However, Amazon Redshift is going to be our historical data warehouse. So this is going to have data dating back to 2016. It'll have the same structure. So this is that fact table, and you can see dim product, geography, and date as well. The dimensional tables are synced across SQL Server and Redshift. So they're going to have the same complete data, date or product or geography information, whereas the transactional data is not synced. So everything in Redshift is from December 2019 and earlier, and then everything from January 2020 onward to present day is in SQL Server. And then we're going to have accounts information coming in from Salesforce. So now for the Denodo piece. So here are my three different data sources. I've already created them, but I'm just going to talk through the configuration piece. So configuring the data source connections for Redshift and for SQL Server is just a JDBC connection. And here you're just going to have to fill in whatever necessary details and credentials are required from the database adapter that you use. And then for Salesforce, it's its own database connection. And here you have an identifier secret, credentials as well, and then you can specify an API version. And normally, if I were just about to make these, I would test the connection, make sure it all works. However, obviously these are already created. So I'm just going to go right into making base views. And so from here, what we really want to do is get those three-dimensional tables and the fact table. And then I'm going to preface these with BV for base view, underscore RS for Redshift, so I know where they're coming from, and then a 1 just to distinguish them from other prior tables that have already been made with the same name. And give them a home in the base views folder just to keep everything organized. And so from here, I'm going to go to create selected, and those base views populated in the base views folder. And in Redshift and SQL Server, we've already specified all the necessary keys, so we're just going to build associations already from foreign keys to optimize querying down the road. Great. I'm just going to move those associations to an associations folder, again, to keep everything organized. And I'm going to do basically the same thing with SQL Server. Find those three-dimensional tables and the fact table, and then BV underscore SS for SQL Server and 1. And then again, I'll be giving them the correct home. And create selected. And we'll also be building associations with these views. And once again, I'll just move those to the associations folder. And lastly, in Salesforce, I actually don't need that many tables. I just need that one accounts table that I showed you all. So here is that one account table. And again, BV underscore SFDC 1. And sending it to its correct home. And create selected. And then here, I like the look of this table, but since it's showing me the display, I'm just going to add ID as the primary key and hit save. All right, so from here we have all of our base views and our data sources settled. So the next thing that we're going to do is create this derived view by unioning the sales view from Redshift and the sales view from SQL Server. Here we'll create a union view and drag this guy out here as well. And because these are structured in the same way, they will have, they'll already have most of the fields joined. I'm just going to join these ones because they might have had a different structure. So Denodo didn't know to connect them by default. So with all those associations built, I can check them out here, and then I can just go look at the output and make sure that everything looks the way that I want it to. And I'll just rename this for usability to IV, fact, sales, all done, and then hit save. And I'll move this guy down to integration views. And so from here, what we're going to do is create a join view on top of this union view, because we need aggregations for that forecasting department. So forecasting is going to see aggregations from all historical data, and then as well as the present year's data. And again, because these dimension tables are synced, it doesn't matter which ones I pick. So I'm going to drag in dim date and then dim product, because forecasting still wants some product information, but they don't need everything. So here I'm going to go from row ID down to product ID, and then row ID to sales date ID. And then I can always check my join conditions, where conditions. What I really want to do is use group by, because I'm going to build those aggregations based on whatever I'm grouping by. And here it just asks me what, if I wanted to clear my output, and that's fine. I do want to clear it. I don't need everything that I'm bringing in. So here, what I'm going to group by are the first date of the month, and then the product category and subcategory. Category and subcategory. And then here's my output with just those 3 specified fields. And I'm going to make 2 new aggregated fields. The first aggregated field will be profit. And so I'm just going to do sum IV dot. Profit, and then hit OK. And then my second aggregated field will be sales. Sales amount. And hit OK. All right, and this is actually all that I'm going to need for my aggregated view for the forecasting department. So here I can just rename it again for usability. So I'll rename this to IV fact sales aggregate 1, and then hit save. And this is it for creating that unified data fabric in Denodo. So I just have all of my base views, which will be used in Tableau, and then I have my aggregated view, which will be used in Power BI. So here's Tableau first, and you can see we used some pre-made tables with basically exactly the same structure, but without that 1 at the end as a distinguishing factor, just to avoid technical difficulties. So here is the SQL Server fact, and then dimensional tables, and then the account data as well. And here's that sales dashboard looking at different products and how they perform in the last 12 months and how they perform in different states. And then here's Power BI's very simple data model with just the 5 aggregated fields, subcategory, profit, sales. Month year is just a name change that I've done in Power BI for usability and to make it look tidier when it's used in the dashboard. Category as well, and then profit margin was a calculated column that got added in later. And here's that dashboard looking at trends from as early as 2016, looking at forecasting and projections. So thank you very much for attending our demo. I hope this was useful. I hope you guys learned something. Thank you for your time.